But I don't know. I don't know if this is true, but and a lot of people in India say that Indians are trying to get whiter and Americans are trying to get tanner. So no, so is that a thing in America?
Uh, yeah, I'd say on the whole that is that is a thing where white people want to be tan, um, and it feels like in so many other places of the world, um, people want to get whiter. I know living in Beijing before Singapore, um, whitening creams were a big thing. Like, it was definitely perceived as being a positive thing in some circles for your skin to be lighter. Um, yeah, so it is one of those. I don't fully know whether there's a link to racism in that, or not, but there definitely does seem to be a pattern, one that's, yeah, I don't really have a ready explanation for.
Yeah. No. Okay. Okay. When I was reading about things I wanted to talk about today, one thing I came across very often was how the term "people of color" was used everywhere. And
Yeah.
yeah, I just want to know if you guys thought it was acceptable to use as a term today when trying to talk about anything in context of racism. So,
Right. To be honest, I've been thinking about how we came up with the terms white people, black people, and brown people. Um, Actually, this is white, and I have never seen anyone who has this skin color in my life, to be honest. Um, and as you can see, the chair right here is black, and I have never seen anyone who is this black. So I don't understand where those colors came from, to be honest. But again, I assume people thought of ways to differentiate between races and colors. Yeah, but then it kind of bothers me why we've come to think that white is positive and black is negative. I understand that people will refer to people who are not who don't have um, lighter skin as being black, but why is black bad and white good? That's what I don't get about the whole concept of referring to people in terms of color.
so do you think? So, like, how do you want to be addressed? Like, I mean, the way I'm understanding it is also how your issue is more to do with the prejudices that associated to the colors, not just the use of the terms. So, yeah, what do you think?
I, I can tell you that I don't have any particular issue with being called black, but what I do have an issue with is people seeing black as being the negative thing. Yeah.
Justin, how about you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I would say listening to Sylvain speak, it did make me think about what we discussed earlier, and this idea of like the whole context surrounding the racial issues, and this idea that you know we associate those colors, black and white, with certain qualities and certain things, and Sylvain brings up a really good point, which is like maybe being identified, because I think there's a certain drive in terms of the way we see the world to be able to categorize things. It just makes, I don't know, maybe it makes sense in our brains to be able to group things together. And so on one hand, that does make sense, but Sylvain is right. There are associations with the word Black that are predominantly negative when you think about how it's used as a symbol in literature and sort of the underlying meanings that we've come to associate with it versus white in general. And that sort of subtext makes it feel like a more antiquated way of categorizing people's races, right? And so from that point of view, I think people of color maybe is a more thoughtful way of discriminating between races if you want to do that. Of course, the other thing it does is it groups all people of color together, right? So you would be a person of color in the States, probably, Roger.
Yeah. So that's the reason why I don't want to go to the States. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, you probably, I don't think you would necessarily identify as a person of color, but you would suddenly be, I think, put into that group. Yeah, so I think there are positives and negatives to using the terminology. It does take a bunch of smaller minorities and sort of put them together in a larger group, which can be maybe empowering in some ways. But then it also kind of dilutes the differences that people may want to hold on to in being Latino or being African American or being Indian. So yeah, I think there's strong arguments for it, which I think Sylvain laid out nicely.
So when people who are in a position of privilege try to find a way to rationalize racism, a lot of times, and this is not something I particularly agree to, but a lot of arguments are to do with how everyone faces racism to a certain extent. And yeah, I don't know how you guys feel about that, because a lot of people talk about how everyone has problems, and everyone has problems that are to do with the fact that they belong from a particular part of the world and have a particular skin color. So yeah, what do you guys think?
Right. It is very true that everyone has problems. That is true. But saying that, I mean, the bulk of the idea of people who try to defend themselves by saying that all lives matter is this phrase, um, now, Black lives might matter, but all lives matter. Yes, no one is saying others' lives do not matter. All people are saying is, yes, all lives matter, but we need to affirm that Black lives matter because Black lives are being taken and no one is saying anything about it. Black people have been suffering for years, for decades, for centuries of slavery, of all kinds of discrimination, of death. I think it makes sense to kind of stand against that and let people know that Black lives count as much as all lives matter. Yeah, it's like me finding Yager on the way on the road injured, and he asked me um, to help him, and I would say, "Oh, what about my life? He's in danger, not me. I need to help him." But then if I stand and tell him, "Oh, my life also matters, so I'm not gonna help you. I need to save my life." You can see that that argument right there is flawed, and that is kind of reflective of what people try to say when they get defensive about Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
doesn't.
yeah, I would. I mean, I agree I agree completely with what Sylvain said. The the big problem with saying that all lives matter, as he said, is it fails to recognize that thing that we were talking about earlier, this systematic, long-term, ongoing inequality in society, in culture. It fails to recognize the impact that has on a particular group of people. And that's, that is a huge issue. Like, saying that all lives matter is essentially saying that you don't understand, you don't recognize, or you don't give credence to the fact that Black people have been systematically oppressed, victimized, and murdered over 400 years in the U.S. If we're talking about the U.S. context, and that is a very different situation than whatever problems exist in a non-Black person's life in the U.S. Right? That's a totally different set of problems, and it's a false equivalency, right? I mean, yes, we all have problems, but the problems that I have as a member of the white majority are not influenced by society in the same way that somebody of equal education and equal life experience has if they're Black in America, for example.
Do you think I mean, the way I see it, it's, yeah, I should, both of you couldn't have put it in a better way. I don't have a lot to say, but it's just, I don't know if all lives matter. Yeah, for me, it just takes away from the point everyone's trying to make. The fact that people are killed every single day for no apparent reason. That's not normal. That shouldn't be happening in the 21st century. When there's been so much growth in every aspect of the world, even though we're struggling right now, there's still been growth, right, long term. So if we manage to overcome so many problems, why is racism still so prevalent? And yeah, I mean, can we end it? And is there a way to completely diminish the existence of racism? Maybe not now, but if like the work is put in now, is there a is it rational to assume that in a little bit of time racism won't exist in society?
I I doubt that we will be able to alleviate racism in any time soon, because it is so ingrained in our minds. It is so ingrained in our politics, in everything we do every day. I think it would take about centuries to try and diminish um, um, aggressive racism, because I believe racism will always be there, but the question is whether or not it will keep um, um, taking the lives of people as it does now, for example, in the US.
So, according to in your opinion, if racism, which I do agree, it's irrational to assume it's going to end anytime soon. But then, what do you think people are trying to get out of the protests that are happening in the states? What is the aim of wanting to fight now?
Right. I think fighting, protesting now is all about getting everyone to be aware of what is happening. And I think if there is any solution, the start would be from raising awareness about what is happening. If people don't know, they wouldn't care. And as you can see, the protests have resulted in even Donald Trump adopting policies regarding the whole racial prejudice in the US. And a whole lot of other things are changing because of the protests. So I think even though racism is not going to end anytime soon, the protests are still there to try and get people to talk about what is happening and then try and find solutions at the individual and collective levels.
Yeah, to just piggyback on what Sylvain's saying, I think the strength of the movement now is that there is a growing recognition, that's been catalyzed by these videos, these really, horrifying and powerful videos of police violence. There's now a recognition amongst a broader swath of society that changes have to be made on on a system-wide level. When you're talking about through politics, through policing, through government, like that's what I think that's what the end goal of a lot of these protests are, is one, as Sylvain said, to raise awareness that racism is still a thing and that it is firmly embedded in the power structure in the U.S., and two, that power structure needs to start being dismantled. And although, I think there's an argument that you guys make, which is that racism will continue to exist, but I think anything we can do to start dismantling the power structures of racism in different societies, that's going to go. It's going to go maybe not a long way, but it's a step in the right direction in terms of trying to right the balance of historical injustice and bring things closer to where they should be.
What you just watched was episode 2 of a show that I just love editing. Honestly, I'm not a fan of editing, but every time I edit it, I watch. Oh, I obviously watch it a lot of times. So yeah, I learned so much. So it's cool. Sorry, if you did enjoy it, please do share it. Not because I want engagement, not just because I want engagement, because it's important. And the few people who watched the episode 1 have said some really, really, really nice things. So if you're someone who watched the last episode, or you're someone who's watching this right now, please do let me know that you like it. If you don't like it, please let me know that as well, so that yeah, I'll work on something. Thank you so much for watching. Yeah, I don't have a lot